Out there, legal warriors. In this video, I'm going to cover 3 myths about prosecuting attorneys that you need to know. Are prosecutors evil? Are they nice? Do they have unlimited resources? Do they decide what happens in cases? All up to them? Well, if you want to know, stay tuned. I'm going to cover it next. My name is Attorney Lance Fryrear. I'm a defense attorney in Linwood, Washington. My law firm's been defending people charged with crimes all throughout Washington State for more than 20 years, and I'm putting out these videos to help educate the public. So if you find this video useful, please like and please subscribe. More people will get the help they need. But I'm just going to jump right into it. 3 myths about prosecuting attorneys. First of all, what is a prosecuting attorney? Most of us may know, but some of us may not. A prosecutor is an attorney who represents the government in a criminal case, typically against an individual. So I'm in Washington State. If it's a City of Seattle case, the plaintiff would be the City of Seattle, who's, let's say, prosecuting a DUI charge against John Smith. That's just a made-up name. Sorry, any John Smiths out there, for DUI. Well, the City of Seattle is represented by an attorney called the prosecuting attorney. And there's going to be more than one. They might call him a city attorney. They might call him different things. But it's the person that is presenting the government's case to the court, saying that the individual violated the law. So that's what a prosecutor is. And I was a prosecutor the first 7 years of my career. And so I know a little bit about that job, and I've learned a lot more, but I've been a defense attorney for 20. So what are the 3 myths? Well, I think myth number 1 is that prosecutors are always the bad guys or the bad gals. And that's not always the case. I have a video about, is the prosecutor out to get you? Some of them are. Some prosecutors are, just about retribution, just about punishment. But I think you'll find, at least for non-felony prosecutors, most prosecutors, at least in Washington State, they might have a more therapeutic approach. It's their job technically to do justice, okay? And that gives them some leeway to figure out what justice is. There's a law firm here in my building that has a lot of prosecuting contracts to provide prosecution services for different cities. And that law firm takes a real therapeutic approach to cases because they're doing non-felonies. They're trying to, help protect the public by trying to make sure that whoever gets accused of a crime gets some services and some education and some help, so maybe they never are accused of breaking the law again, right? And so a prosecutor's job is to do justice, not just get conviction. So how does it help you if you're charged with a crime or you get charged with a crime? Well, if you've seen my other videos, oftentimes I'm going to have, and many good attorneys will have our clients do some things, right? Well, let's do some educational classes. Let's do anger management. Let's do an alcohol evaluation. Let's do some community service. Something in addition to defending the fact pattern of the case. And if you know the prosecutor's not just coldly wed to the facts of the case like a robot, and they only care about black and white, you realize that's not true, hopefully, for your prosecutor. They're a person. If your attorney's good at turning on their personhood, put on your person pants, not your prosecutor pants, prosecutor, well, then those things that we have you do make a difference, right? Let's do some counseling. Let's do some therapy. Let's do something so the prosecutor has an option, this human being whose job it is to do justice, not just convict you. So they have an option to exercise some discretion in your favor for the betterment of you, your future, and in our opinion, the public's too. So if you realize that the prosecutors aren't always the bad guys, there's not some evil person out to get you for the most part, that's going to help you in your case. And that's why it's important that you know this, right? Now, major felonies are quite a bit different. Prosecutors don't necessarily have a lot of discretion there, depending on the county here in Washington State. And so there might be a more fact-based approach to things, but still, if the case gets bad from a fact perspective for the prosecutor, then they're going to start to look at some of these collateral things to make a determination of how hard they want to hold the line. So remember, myth 1 is prosecutors are always bad. They're always out to get you. I don't think that's true. So myth 2, and this one's important, the myth is that prosecutors have unlimited resources and capabilities to go after you in your case. That's absolutely not true. Again, every case is different. A murder case, there's going to be a lot more prosecution resources applied to that than the standard DUI or the standard assault, something like that. standard theft. So realize that the prosecutor is a government position. And the government isn't always well funded. Now, the police department seems to be pretty well funded in most places, but not necessarily the attorney. So they are put upon, they do not have unlimited resources or unlimited energy, right? Everyone gets 24 hours in a day. Prosecutor gets the same 24 hours that I do, the same 24 hours that you do. And they often have a huge caseload. I know I did when I was a prosecutor for those 7 years. So that's another reason why doing doing some educational classes, doing things like that can be helpful. And it's another reason why just really you're demanding your attorney look at every little single fact and tell the prosecutor this fact and that fact early on in the case at a pretrial stage is not helpful, because that prosecutor doesn't have unlimited resources. They don't have the ability emotionally, physically, to take their 250 cases and care to the finest detail in the report about what one witness said versus the other. They might at some point, but we're better off negotiating at a very high level to begin with, and we don't start cutting with that scalpel to really close details until we get to a trial phase. And hopefully we never get to a trial phase, right? Hopefully we get it resolved favorably for you without leaving it up to the jury. Because once we leave it up to the jury, now it's out of our control what happens, right? So I've got a video, I think the video is called Don't Cut Too Soon, that I made about this very specific idea that prosecutors don't have unlimited resources, unlimited time, unlimited energy. If you're a client, don't try to be telling your attorney what to do to focus too closely on the fact pattern too early, because it's going to be not only diminishing returns, can actually hurt your case, because the prosecutor gets too much into the facts too early, they may just shut down and say no. We never want a prosecutor to say no for what we want to benefit you as a client. So that's myth 2. And finally, myth 3 is that the prosecutor decides the punishment in a case. And that's a myth to a degree, and there's some truth to it as well. But the myth part of it is they only make a recommendation. They don't get to be the end-all, be-all of what happens. If we unfortunately have a situation where we have to plead to something, right? We never want to plead to anything, but let's say there's a case where, it's a reduction from a DUI to a lesser charge. That's one of the more common situations where we plead to a lesser charge. Insults and things like that, we try usually more likely to get dismissed. But the prosecutor will make a recommendation to the court in Washington State, but it's just a recommendation. It's up to the court to decide what happens. And sometimes there can be a disagreed recommendation. I can think of cases in my law firm where the prosecutor wanted one thing to happen and they would not agree to what we wanted to happen. So we ended up going with a disagreed recommendation to the judge. And it's the judge that decides the final punishment or sentence. It's not the prosecutor. So we have to know our judge. Is the judge likely to just rubber stamp everything a prosecutor says? Or is the judge more likely to be open-minded and listen to what the defense has to say and look at all those good classes we had our client do, or all that good community service that sets our client apart from all the other cases where the attorneys didn't have their clients do the extra stuff, right? If you want to get the most out of your case, typically speaking, you want to do the most so your attorney has the most to work with for all the options. So prosecutors don't decide the punishment. However, prosecutors do decide a lot of things, right? They decide if they're going to dismiss a charge. They decide if they're going to add a charge. The judge doesn't do that. The judge can dismiss a charge for a legal problem, but those are few and far between because, of course, the professionals in the system don't make the same mistakes, right? They're not going to have a bad search 4 times in a row, right? Once they have one bad search, they're probably going to clean it up the next time, or they're not going to be a police officer anymore. So the prosecutor gets to decide what the charge is, to reduce the charges, to add charges, to dismiss charges. The judge needs to approve some of those things, but they typically will. And the prosecutor gets to decide, are we going to offer an SOC, a stipulated order of continuance? Are they going to demand from us, anger management or domestic violence treatment as a condition of resolving the case? And they will make a recommendation upon a plea to the judge. And the truth is, the judge is fairly likely to follow a prosecutor's recommendation, but usually that's because the defense is agreeing to it as well. In a felony case, when there's a prosecutor recommending one thing and the defense recommending another, more often than not, they're probably going to follow the prosecutor because it's a serious case. It's not always. Plenty of times we get the judge to follow us too, but realize that it's important to know the prosecutor isn't the end-all be-all, that ask your attorney. The attorney will hopefully be able to tell you about what's likely to happen if there's a disagreed recommendation at a plea and a sentencing between the prosecutor and the defense. So those are 3 myths, right, about prosecutors. And I can think of a lot more, but I'm always really grateful for a prosecutor that falls into the categories my job to do justice, not just my job to look with blinders on about what the black and white of the law is, right? I've always said that my job when I was a prosecutor was to provide the gray to the black and white of the system, right? The legislature, when they write the laws, they only have certain examples. And let me tell you, we need some gray out there so we can all get by together. So if you found this video useful, please like and please subscribe. More people get the help they need. And more importantly, if you have a legal matter, if you have a crime in Washington State, feel free to reach out to my firm, listen to what happened, we'll identify a way forward, and we will be there for you. Thank you.